Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to the BGG Show. We're back, finally, once again. We said we'd get back to it sooner rather than later, but it's been later. Today we got Candice Harris, we got Eric Martin, who's questioning whether we're here, or I don't know, and then we got Stephen Buonocore. We're going to cover a bunch of subjects today, mostly our Gen Con experiences from this last two weeks ago almost now, and we're also going to talk about the awards this season. We had the BoardGameGeek Golden Geek Awards that were announced in May, and we have the SDJ Awards that were announced in July, and we're also going to talk about the Dice Tower Awards that were announced at Gen Con last week, or a week and a half ago. So the first thing is, why don't we start with our Gen Con observations? Oh, we're also going to talk about games that we played. I've got my cards right here in front of me. So let's start with the Gen Con stuff. Candice, why don't we start with you? How was your Gen Con experience?
Oh yeah, Gen Con was awesome. This was my third time going, and the first time I went was 2021, so it was like that weird year.
It was the empty hall.
Exactly, but I knew no difference because that was my first time to Gen Con. But yeah, this year was definitely like a lot more people. There were a lot more people there. And I was actually just talking to Steven before this, and like we realized like we bumped into each other once the entire time. And it's like, so many people there, but you just, because there's so many people, you rarely get to see anybody. But yeah, I had a great time, met with like lots of publishers, checked out a lot of games. I was able to play one of the games I was most excited about, which was Age of Innovation from Capstone. And
I saw you playing that one.
Yeah, 5-player game. It took us a while.
Yeah, yes.
It took us a while, but it was cool. I also got to do a 2-hour demo with Chip Theory Games to try out the new Elder Scrolls game, and then of course Gen Con always now I'm aware of games that I'm super excited about that are coming up at Spiel. So overall, it was great for me, and then unfortunately I came home and was sick, so that was kind of a bummer because I have all these games and I'm like, I can't play them. I had to cancel game days. The sickness didn't even bother me. It was more that I had to cancel the game days. But it was really cool from my perspective. And it was just also great because I realized that this was the first Gen Con since we launched the BGG podcast. And there were a lot of people that came up and were like, oh, I love the podcast. We love the podcast. And I was like, that's so cool. Because I realized that doing a podcast, it's like a one-way communication path outwards. So I don't get to usually engage with people who are actually listening. So that was really cool. Made me smile a lot. And it was just a good time.
Hey, Eric, how was your Gen Con? I know you were busy.
It was fine. Yeah.
I saw you would walk to the Disney Lorcana event, which I was sad. I would have loved to have just had you go with us. That was a trek.
Oh, yeah, that was fine. I wasn't even going to mention that because it's kind of weird. I generally try not to talk about press things.
Yeah, I know.
But you brought it up, so yeah. There was a Disney Lorcana event, and they had us take pictures, and they printed a card with our face on it, and it's all this
I got my card right here. I got my card right here.
Where was my invitation to that?
Oh,
come on.
I like Eric. So, Eric actually had the staff, which was amazing. I did not see. I saw the staff after I took my picture.
I got it on the table somewhere. I just dumped all my all my Gen Con stuff. I just dumped on the table, and I haven't even touched it.
Now I have FOMO. Okay. All right.
But the weird thing is, I assume they brought us there so that we'll learn more about Lorcana and we'll talk about it. And they had a trading event where you're trying to, get certain cards in order to get a signed little artwork thing. But they gave us one starter deck. So I literally can't play the game.
Right.
I have one deck.
Dale played it with one deck with two people. And only two ink colors. Nikki and I actually had two different starter decks, so we can actually play. But to really play it, you want the other two colors that we still don't have.
And then mix it all up.
But we couldn't even play that evening because it was so windy outside. I know. It was so windy outside that we couldn't even play. We were busy trying to hold everything, cards blowing around and our napkins and everything. It was crazy. So it was like mostly just the trading part, which was really fun.
The caviar was flying off the table. Our wine
I don't think we had
glasses were
caviar.
spilling. Our top hats flying in the wind. It was a very elaborate event.
Yeah.
Yeah, my invitation got lost in the mail, I'm sure.
It was a
Mine
tiny
too.
event. I will tell you that. It's in a bar that has a nice outdoor
You're
seating
just making
area.
it worse for Steve.
Yeah.
It was a
Yeah,
I know.
tiny
Tell me it's in
event,
a
Steve.
But they're
bar.
like-
They were
they're
serving you
like-
drinks.
They have to. I'll tell you what the deal is. They have to know you, and it's people that are not part of our community directly normally. So it's okay. You'll be next year. They'll know who you are. You're going to be part of this show, right?
Wow.
That's right.
I
yeah.
am just been.
Steven.
That's right. We're just.
That's
I'm
right.
going to punch you while you're down. Anyway. Well, Stephen, how was your Gen Con?
Beat up the new guy. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So obviously, Disney Lorcana captured the zeitgeist of the show. It really did. With if you ever thought that there were epic lines at Disney, the line for Disney Lorcana will go down in history as the biggest of all Disney lines to get one of these packs. And a lot of sort of bad things happened with that. But that was the first day, and they got it under control after that. And then after that, it went smoothly. I did not want to wait hours and hours and hours and hours for a Disney Lorcana pack. I did get a demo of it at the UKGE, so I do know about the game. And they might have given me a card without my face on it back then. But while that did capture, the Vox Populi or something like that of everybody's show there, really for me, this would have been the big thing for me
Yeah.
at the show. So I got to play, and I believe another person on here also got to play, Ticket to Ride Legends of the West, the Legacy game, and got to play that with Alan Moon, Rob Davio, and Matt Leacock. And we played the first game, because this is a legacy game, so with no spoilers. We played the first game. It teaches you the system of the game and the changes between your base Ticket to Ride and how it's going to play out. And then you get up to the point where you're going to open the first box, but they didn't because they weren't going to give any spoilers out. And I was lucky enough to actually get a copy as a press copy, which was really nice of them. I did not expect that. Asmodee gave that to me. So I will be doing some coverage.
You need a
on it.
Lorcana
I know.
card with
what
your
the heck are you
face on
talking
it?
about? Where's my
I know, that
copy of
was-
Ticket to Ride?
I know.
Legacy?
Way better.
That was kind of cool, I got to admit. So yes, I guess I shouldn't complain about not having my picture on the card. I have my pictures on other cards in games, but all right, we won't go there. Eric, you got that same private demo, right? Or playthrough of the game as well.
There
What
it
is
is.
he doing? Oh, he got one too. See? So maybe the cool people, I don't know, got them. So yeah, Eric, you got that too, right? It was really fun to play
people.
with the three of them who we know, right, very well, and it was wonderful. That was certainly one of the highlights of the show. And the other thing I'd like to mention is that the sales from all the exhibitors, everybody who I talked to, and I talked, they're all my friends. I talked to all the publishers. They said, most of them said, not only was their best Gen Con, a lot of them were saying Thursday was their best Gen Con. They sold more on Thursday than they had sold at any other of the Gen Cons all 4 days. So if anybody has any doubt about conventions and us getting back together on a permanent basis, in one place to game, have no doubt after Gen Con, they broke all the attendance records they had from pre-pandemic. So we're back, baby. We're back.
Well, it was for us. It was Nikki and I. It was great. What were you saying, Derek? Eric, do you want to say something?
I had two things about that. So it was interesting story. PSI was apparently contacted by a publisher and said, hey, can you get us more product? Because we're out. This was, I think, Thursday night, as Steven was saying.
Yep.
Thursday did awesome. I think it was Smirk and Dagger. And PSI was like, what are you talking about? And some guy there was like, I could drive stuff up because I believe they're in Georgia, Atlanta area.
They are in the greater Atlanta area, yes.
I mean, greater Atlanta area is like a third of Georgia. I mean,
They're north of Atlanta, so they're actually close.
Yeah.
An hour outside of the center of the city, I guess.
so PSI called all the other publishers who were at Gen Con that it represents and asked them all if they want more stuff. And pretty much all or most of them said yes, and I brought up a van, dropped off lots of stuff, and just
Wow.
And a
Many more
little
sales.
a little extra on that one. As soon as they realized that they needed to do this, not only did they contact each one, either calling or showing up at the booth, they said, "You've got 10 minutes to put your order in because we got to load that truck and start driving." So literally everyone. And by the way, PSI is Publisher Services Incorporated, right? They are a consolidator who represent many publishers who then sell to distributors. It's an extra layer, but they do the sales, warehousing, and consolidation of the products. So they are able to get product for all of these publishers that were there and literally get it there the next day. So kudos to PSI for being able to execute on that kind of thing.
Yeah, there was
I
definitely a
believe
lot
that'll
of
be a
product.
service they offer next year. I mean,
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, why not?
Upcharge that
Yeah.
sucker.
So that's
Lincoln-
right. I mean, they're not doing it for free,
Yeah, I know.
but
Lincoln, what were your Gen Con highlights?
Well, so for Nikki and I, it was a little bit of work, more work than we had expected, because you end up just talking. So Candice was saying how she had a hard time running into people, like you'd seen briefly. We saw everybody. The only person we didn't see that we were hoping to see was James Hudson, and we were trying to meet up with you. So if you spend any effort to try to meet up with somebody, it's not going to happen. But if you're just going to walk around and all of a sudden you're going to see people, I could not believe it. We'd walk out of some space and there'd be somebody who was not even supposed to be there who was hoping to see us. And we ran into Stephen on day one and had our conversation about this specific thing we're doing right now. And we had run into Deborah's husband one day. He goes, "I know nobody at this convention and only you guys, and I cannot believe I run into you guys." But it was crazy. I cannot believe how often we ran into people. There's nobody I miss besides James, and it would have been fun to see James. He lives in the area, so it's not that big of a deal. But still, I haven't seen him for a little while. Also, it was
you just got to do
felt-
this, Lincoln, more.
It felt, yeah, exactly. It felt packed. Then you don't see them. I don't mind. It was fantastic. It was really, really wonderful to see everybody. It was a very busy con. Candice, it was twice the size of your first one. So,
Crazy.
Yeah.
which it felt it. That was the one benefit of not having a booth. I actually really like having a booth at these conventions. But the benefit is if you feel uncomfortable or you're tired, you can easily walk out and take a break. And we did that several times. We actually took a walk on Friday to, what is Shapiro's Delicatessen, which is south of the convention center.
Yeah.
But fantastic, but it was warmer than we expected. So we hung out there. It was Nikki's birthday that day, so we hung out there for a little bit longer and shared a piece of pie and had huge deli sandwiches, and it was really, really great. Also, just tons of great games. We did not get to play as many games as we hoped, but we saw a lot of games and saw some new products from GameGenic that are forthcoming. One of them was the Token Keep, which we have them here. They showed us those, and they showed us some new products that are coming, which are really exciting. So that was really, really cool. And just other fun stuff happening, all kinds of stuff you can't talk about, of course. Lorcana was an odd thing for us, was because it's like 2 weeks away, right? It's coming actually in a few days.
2 days. Debuts on the 18th.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's cool. I'm sure I won't be able to buy one. I would like to buy the other starter box, but I've never done the evening things that Eric was talking about earlier, as far as like the Lorcana and stuff like that. We did a few this time, and it was interesting. I did not do the Asmodee one. We had like dinners planned and all kinds of stuff. So we were constantly rejiggering the schedule, especially because Google Calendars did not help me at all. I had 2 events planned at the same time for one thing, and I know how that stuff works. But I think I approved one of the meetings while I was in Dallas, so the time overlapped. I thought it was at 10, and the other one was at 9. And so Nikki had to do, so Nikki did a Lorcana playthrough on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. that they wanted us both to do, except they really only wanted one of us to do, so that ended up being what it was. And then I had a meeting with the publisher at the same time. So I said, Nikki, you do the playthrough, I'll go do the publisher meeting. But otherwise, it was really, really fun. Anybody else have anything to want to add about it?
About
Okay.
Gen Con?
Yeah,
Just a great time.
Hey,
Great
go for it,
time
Vic.
had by all, I think.
super fun.
Okay, so let's get to the awards. The BGG Awards were Golden Geek Awards were announced in May, the winners, and so I have the list of everything that was that won between the BGG ones, the Golden Geeks, and the Dice Tower Awards, which were announced a week and a half ago. There's a lot of overlap. I was surprised, and they've got different categories, which is pretty interesting. That the BGG ones do not do. But let me quickly go over. I have them on my phone. So Eric, I am going to look at my phone. I do have. So we have the Golden Geeks. The 2-player award was Splendor Duel. The artwork was Flamecraft. Cooperative game was Return to Dark Tower. Expansion Dune Imperium Rise of Ix. Innovative game Cat in the Box Deluxe. Light game of the year Cat in the Box Deluxe. Medium game of the year Heat Pedal to the Metal. Heavy game of the year Carnegie, one of the two. I've always heard it's Carnegie. So anyway, party game was Ready, Set, Bet. Print and play was Aquamarine. Solo game was Touring Machine. Thematic game was Heat Pedal to the Metal. War game was Undaunted Stalingrad. Best board game app was Everdell. And a shout out to the best podcast of friends of ours, This Game is Broken. For the SDJs, these don't match any of the awards that we've been mentioning so far.
Yep.
The Kinderspiel des Jahres was Mysterium Kids, Captain Echo's Treasure. Kennerspiel was Challengers, which surprises me that it's not on any of the other lists. Spiel des Jahres was Dorf Romantic, the board game, and the special award was Unlock Game Adventures and Unlock Kids Detective Stories. For the Dice Tower Awards, they had Welcoming Game, which is a different category, Flamecraft, Expansion, Imperium Rise of Ix, so it sounds like a surprise. Same category, same as our category. Party game was Ready, Set, Bet. Solo game was Return to Dark Tower, that is different. 2-player Splendor Duel. Best reprint, Cat in the Box. Cooperative game, Return to Dark Tower. Small publisher, Cardboard Alchemy with Flamecraft. Best game from a new designer, Acropolis by Jules Massot and Gigamic. Best theming, My Father's Work. Best production value, Foundations of Rome. Best artwork, Flamecraft. Strategy, Endless Winter, Paleo Americans. Innovative Touring Machine, and Game of the Year, Heat Pedal to the Metal. So there's some overlap there. What do you think, Stephen?
So yeah, my first comment on those three types of awards is that the Spiel des Jahres is truly an award where a committee plays all these games, hundreds of games, and they play them. They make sure they play them, and they rate them, and then there's a weeding out until you get to a big list, which is kind of recommended, and then they get to the 3 nominees, then they pick a winner. That's a process. Other awards are, don't take these words wrong, they're like popularity awards, right? Because, people vote and they only know certain games. Like we're talking about, you can't see all these games that come out every year. So you're going to vote on the things you know, the few things you've played. So that to me is the big difference between all those awards, and that literally is both the BGG Golden Geeks and the Dice Tower Awards. People vote; they have not played them all, and they don't have the gravitas really of the Spiel des Jahres and what they're doing, Spiel des Jahres and what they're doing.
Yeah,
second that.
That's true, and they also have restrictions for what games can get nominated at the SDJ. I mean, ours do too. They have to come out in the year that it was awarded, but you can select from the entirety of the games that are available. Right. I feel that a People's Choice Award, which is really what the BGG Golden Geeks are, is a good choice though, because it really reflects the audience. Now, again, as Steven says, it's what people know. I don't tend to vote on things I don't know. So when you go in, there's a way you rank them in, you put the 10 games and you rank them, and then they take the weight of those and then combine them to determine the winners. The SDJs are impressive. This year's awards are different. I mean, as I say, Challengers, I don't know if Challengers is as popular in the United States as it is in Europe. I mean, it's crazy how much people talk about it in Europe. And the jury members who were at Gen Con this year were surprised there wasn't a Challengers set up. I go, well, the game's probably not even available. It's probably sold out. And that is a challenge too, like the delay in releases and stuff like that. Although that one was pretty much available worldwide pretty quickly. Eric, do you have something to say?
All I know is Challengers, Challengers 2 has been renamed Challengers Beach Cup, and that will officially be announced on the 17th. which is tomorrow as we record this, and in the past as you're listening. And it's meant to be independent. And I think the main thing with Challengers is it's a super fun experience. And I would definitely think they would have had it at a convention, but it is not very attractive from my perspective. Like the components are awesome, but the cartooning does it no favors. I don't think it gives it a good, unique look. Something that really stands out compared to everything else. So I like everything about that game except the artwork. So which is unfortunate because that's the reason you're going to pick it up in the first place. You see it.
Shelf presence.
And it's compelling. Yeah. And every time I look at it, it looks like a golf game because of the way the cover is with the flag on there. Yeah. So
if you don't mind, I'd like to make one minor addendum to what I said, is that there's nothing wrong at all with the Dice Tower Awards. There's nothing wrong at all with the Golden Geek Awards. And they are, as you mentioned, Lincoln, they're like a popularity award. They're like, what are people playing? It's like, the number of people who own them and rate them. And guess what? The ones that were on those lists are the ones that I'm going to play. Like, and I saw Candice going like, like Return to Dark Tower. Yeah.
No. It was Rise of Ix. And Rise of Ix.
Okay. Well, I was on,
I actually haven't played Dark Tower.
Okay. Oh, Dark Tower is awesome.
So that's like my little takeaway from this is like, it won 2 awards. I've never played this game. I need to play it. All right, continue.
And, and Heat. And these are the games that are, the popular ones. So, if anything, they represent the ones that I am playing and the ones that I would say, yes, these are the best games in the Spiel des Jahres have gone through a process. That's all that I'm just trying to say.
Sure.
I want people to think that I'm dissing anybody's awards here. Another thing to maybe bring up is that the Spiel des Jahres awards are the ones that will, in the end, have the biggest impact for a publisher, especially the German publisher, right? If you win that award, the Spiel des Jahres or the Kinderspiel des Jahres or the Kenner Spiel des Jahres, you will sell, for the main award, hundreds of thousands of units of that game in Germany alone, and then hopefully get picked up by an English-speaking publisher, and then it gets out to the world. So that's the one that has the biggest economic impact, I'll say, on the industry.
Right. Go ahead, Candice.
I was just gonna say, I'm not familiar with how the Dice Tower Awards are selected. Is it the people from the Dice Tower?
It's not a popularity award.
Yeah,
it's not a popularity award. They put together a group of people that vote. That's it. There's a group of people that are, and it's a lot. It's a decent number. I don't know if it's
50 or so.
Yeah. There you go.
I was trying to do 50, but it doesn't really work here.
I was on it at one point, and I was publishing games. I said, this is not really, I shouldn't even be on it. So I'm not on that committee, but it's 50 people and they vote on, and they nominate. And if it's got enough nominations or seconds or whatever, it stays there. And then they do a vote. So it's not a popularity contest, but still you don't have to play all the games. They ask people to play as many as possible, of course.
Right.
I mean, maybe a difference as well is that the Spiel des Jahres jury is definitely looking for something that I am going to recommend to the general audience. It's not just like, here's what I think is good, but I think most people will really dig this game.
Right.
And so that's what they're putting out rather than just like, I thought this was cool.
Right. It isn't necessarily their favorite game.
Yes.
And that is the big difference. They're picking something that will work with the audience, which is much wider, when you really think about it, than what our awards are for. Ours are, all these awards, the Golden Geek Awards and the Dice Tower Awards are for our audience, which is, people that are into games. So Return to Dark Tower maybe would be something that you'd think that could do that. Of course, it need to be available in German for it to even be nominated. But there's lots of things that disqualify games from even being considered in the STJs, and that is not an issue in the in the other awards. You can pick whatever you want, no matter what the situation is. If the rules are terrible, if you love the game, then what difference does it make, right? There's definitely more of a discerning element to what they're choosing. They want them to be pop. It needs to be representative of the hobby for that country, that audience. And I think they're successful. It is surprising to me how much there is no surprise in the SDJs, right? I don't think the only games I didn't really hear of were the children's games, and that's pretty much always the case. But I mean, I used to be many awards. You know, you'd go, what are these games? I've never heard of them. I mean, Dorf Romantic was a big surprise for many people, but I knew about that game at Spiel and wanted to play it, but it was in German only, so I waited until it was available in English. But you know, that's how that works. Eric actually had a great video that he chose 3 other games he would pick. Did you pick a children's game too?
No, I only did the
so
Spiel.
2 other games.
I put out 3 Spiel nominees from my perspective. I mean,
I love
Dorf
Kazuka,
Romantic.
by the way.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pegasus at Gen Con did have a decent pile of Dorf Romantic. They had a little mountain there that they were demoing on top of the mountain. And by the end of the show, that was gone. They had sold the last copies in North America, gone. And they had a tractor arriving on Tuesday after Gen Con with the next shipment. So they're refilling and will be available again.
Wow.
So perfect timing. Yeah.
Right.
I noticed like a lot of that. One of the big surprises for Nikki and I was we walked in on Wednesday as people were setting up and sweated it out in there and saw the giant pile of Acquire, the new edition of Acquire from Renegade Games. And that pile was tiny by Saturday. So that one obviously has an audience.
Hey,
so
I was just going to say, I have a quick Acquire side story. The other day, because I've been sick, Matt met up with a college friend who was in town, went to dinner, I'm home, and they got to talking about me into board games, you know, working in the industry and everything. And it turns out one of the guy's wife was like, oh, my grandfather designed board games. And she's like, oh, he had a whole, and then Doug, Matt's friend, was like, no, Candice has like a whole wall, like it looks like a game store in there. And she's like, no, my grandfather, like this. And then she's
Sid
like,
Saxon?
oh yeah, yes. And it was
Oh
like,
my God. Her grandfather was
crazy-
Sid Saxon? That's
How
awesome.
crazy is that? And then like Matt starts talking about BoardGameGeek, and she's like, yeah, he has a whole page. And it's like,
Yeah.
and I didn't even realize he designed I'm the Boss also.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's done a lot of games. He did a lot of games.
But yeah, they mentioned Matt was like, yeah, can't stop in some game that starts with an A.
Oh,
So anyway, I just thought that was crazy.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and apparently
his
his granddaughter Stephanie, who Matt had dinner with, is one of the characters in I'm the Boss.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, that's so
great.
cool. So random. Go ahead, continue,
great.
Eric.
Random. Love it.
Wow. Yeah. Saxon had the most amazing collection that was then auctioned off after his death. And now it's just scattered everywhere. So I talked with someone at Renegade Saturday night, and they were saying Acquire was the second most demoed game that they had in their room. They had an exhibit space, and then they had a space in the event hall, and then they had their own room that was right opposite the exhibit hall. And Search for Lost Species was the most demoed. Acquire was second, only because they didn't have more tables devoted to Acquire. If they had had more, he says it would have easily been the most demoed.
Wow.
Because it's some contingent of people who have heard of it. The game came out in '64. Like, yeah, it has a long record, but also it's just people are like, this game looks cool, and trying it out for the first time. So incredibly successful, and a great pickup from Renegade from Hasbro, which was not doing anything with that game.
Yeah.
So
That's actually exciting that they are doing that. It's funny too, because we also have the other game that was influenced by it, influenced it, Big Boss, which Eric showed me, but I didn't actually get to play. We finally got a copy of it, but that's one that we've actually wanted to do on our show. You're showing it to us there.
On the shelf, so
Yeah.
We've been wanting to do it on the show for ages, but you know, the original edition was very scarce now, and they had a couple other editions. They did the Jolly Dutch Productions or something like that did one, and then Cosmos did one before that. No, none of those, they're terrible.
Well, Jolly Dutch was not officially a re-implementation of Big Boss.
Really?
Initially, no.
Huh.
It was not announced that way, and Crummer's name was not mentioned. And then
Really?
later on, he was added in as like a co-designer. Just
Wow.
sideline there. But
Okay, well, definitely the
Yeah.
other one from Cosmos in 2009 or something like that was
Alcazar.
legit. Yeah. And that one actually took it down from 6 players to 5 players. That's interesting. I did not know that about the whatever that one was called, the Jolly Dutch one. Chartered. Okay, there you go.
Chartered.
Well, cool. Let's. Eric, did you have some news that you want to tell us about?
I was going to, and then my water heater broke. So
Ah.
I didn't look up things. It's interesting. I mean, we're talking about announcements here with game news. It's hard to even think about it because I was looking back over everything that I've published over the last few weeks. There was a lot of stuff I saw at Gen Con. I played at Gen Con. I read about all this. I announced about things ahead of time. And it's hard to look at that and be like, what's the top news that's coming out of that? Because there's so much stuff. There's nothing that's necessarily getting traction across the board or setting the industry on fire or doing. It's very diverse. I mean, the thing that most interested me I included in one of my Gen Con write-ups was about this trading card game coming out in 2024 called Altered from a new publisher, Equinox. The designer is Jahres Bonocore, who started Libelud, who's the designer of Seasons and Dice Forge. And he sold Libelud to Asmodee in 2020. I don't know how many bags with dollar signs he got for that, but it was enough that he went off and started this new company, Equinox. And the idea behind the trading card game, it's got 2 things that really struck me. One is that you are exploring. You have 2 characters on the end of a track, and you are trying to advance the characters to meet. So one can move, or the other can move, or they can both move. And to move, you have to have strength in an expedition zone. And so you'll have 2 expedition zones for the 2 characters, and you're trying to advance them. So you need strength relative to the other person. If I have more strength than you in particular categories, you can't advance. And if I have more than you in certain other categories, not necessarily the same, I can't. So it's more exploration than killing. And the second main thing is that there's going to be a QR code on every card, different QR code on every card. You can scan your cards into the app. You have ownership, and if I want to sell it, Candice can just buy my card through, if I put it up for sale in the app, she can buy it for me in California, and then I can mail it to her, or she can go to Cardamundi, the manufacturer, and have a copy printed and shipped to her. So the cost is like $1 a card is the base price, is what they're talking about now, $1 US. Shipping price depends on where you are, because Cardamundi is in Belgium. There's going to have other facilities elsewhere that might be producing, but initially in Belgium. So I still have my card, but now officially she owns the card because she has the digital rights to it. And so I can still play with mine. I can have a whole deck, and Candice is going to a tournament. I'm like, this has been doing awesome in my neck of the woods, Candice. You want to use my deck? And I can sell it to her, or I can lend it to her. So I can go to the app, lend it to her for a certain amount of time. She can have the whole thing printed out and shipped to her, use it at the tournament, and then when the lending period expires, ownership goes back to me.
Wow.
It's such a bizarre concept that is
crazy.
It's very, very different. Yeah.
It's like
it is
NFTs.
crazy to think about.
Yeah.
It is like NFTs. Someone said it's an NFT CG now. Instead of a trading card game, it's an
Perfect.
NFT CG.
Very good.
Except we can all just play our own stuff. Like if you don't care about tournaments, then whatever. You can just buy cards like normal and do whatever you want. Or if you want particular cards for a deck, you can probably find someone that you can just pay a fee to borrow them, print them out. Or I can print out multiple copies of all my own stuff and just give them to my friends, and we all make our own decks and play whatever we want. Like, it's just a very different style of thinking about the game. Obviously, Equinox earns money every time you print something, and right? So they don't care if you have it printed. They're going to earn money that way. They'll earn money if you buy it from the starters and boosters.
And they're allowing any amount of printing of all these cards. That doesn't matter because they get a little bit of juice each time. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and so the idea is essentially like it has that lottery feel that I know people love about TCGs, where you're gonna open something and you get something awesome. You know, they've got commons. There are two types of rares. There's a rare that's in the normal faction and a rare in a different faction, because you have to have, I believe, a single faction deck. There are uniques that are essentially the card. So there's a common, and then you upgrade it a little, and it's got different art for the rare, and then you upgrade it further, and it's got even wilder art for the unique. And if I get a unique of a card, and Candice does, and Steven does, and Lincoln does, they're all going to have different powers for the unique version. So it's the same card, but mine is different from everyone else's. However, I can sell mine, and someone can print theirs, and now they have it too. So it's combining all these weird ownership things with like the love of the chase. And sure, if you hate TCGs and you think it's a money sink, yes, it is 100% a money sink.
Yes.
I just don't like
if you love
seeing
that type of stuff. You don't like seeing? Yeah.
I don't like seeing the QR code on the card itself. Because I know like Soulforge Fusion does something like that, but they do it at the deck level. So when you buy a deck, you can like scan it in, and then you can play it digitally, and all the cards associated with that deck are kind of in there. But it's not like you're looking at a card and then there's this big QR code on it. I think
that was the whole.
I think it's more acceptable in Europe. Europe uses QR codes way more than the U.S. for a lot of things.
And the whole, at the deck level QR codes, that was the whole premise behind Keyforge, and still is, right? Every Keyforge deck is unique. Names and everything about it is unique. And they digitally print it, of course, and it's all tracked by a QR code, and you log it in. Before Keyforge fell and now has been resurrected again, there was over 1 million unique decks registered in their system. Yeah, it's phenomenally big. I backed the resurrection of Keyforge, and I had never played it, but I said, you know what? I'm gonna get a couple of decks and just play this. I still haven't played it, of course, shelf of shame, but I'm definitely gonna drag Paula here to the table, and we're gonna play Keyforge at some point.
Nice. Well, Derek loves Keyforge and actually participated in a tournament at Gen Con, and was 1, 2, 3 out, unfortunately for him, but it would have been fun to see if he, because he loves it. He absolutely was so on board when they brought it back, and was very happy to see it not disappear, which I understand that. And it was actually really an amazing idea technologically. And this new one sounds pretty exciting too, actually, to me.
Very cool.
I'm not too bothered by the QR code idea, as long as it's not gigantic.
Derek has been trying to teach me Keyforge forever. Like every time we're at a convention together, he brings decks and he's like, we're gonna do it, and we never have time. But one day, Candice, so I haven't played Keyforge yet.
The next time we're at a convention and Derek's at a convention, I believe that intersection is BGG Con. I believe that intersection. We are playing Keyforge with Derek. Derek, who is our producer on this show, is listening to us saying this. Derek, you're teaching us, and we're playing Keyforge.
Oh, he's definitely locking that in right now.
Yeah, he's planning it.
I mean, it is, like Lincoln was saying, it's almost more like I am enraptured by the concept of this. Like, I'm not 20 anymore. I don't have the time for a TCG. I'm not going to be making decks. That's not for me. But the concept of it is fascinating, because they essentially, in the presentation I went to, which again was a press thing, they were talking just about trying to look at every concept of the trading card game and be like, does it have to be like this? Like, what if you're starting from scratch? And how would it work? And how you do all this stuff? And so they still have starters and they still have boosters. Like, that's familiar. But a lot of the other things are not. And so
I'm just intrigued to see how well they'll be at actually shipping that correct card, because they're going to do it on a giant sheet and cut them, and then they have to send those out. So I have no idea how that'll work.
Yeah, that's. I mean, again, I can't imagine the nightmare of that. And if it really takes off, and you're like, how many of these are we doing a day to everywhere in the world, and then we're going to ship to Brazil, and then it's going to get lost because
exactly.
Oh yes,
Brazil, or so many possible complications. But again, just the pie in the sky concept is like pretty neat.
Well, Stephen, I know you're going to do some insider news as probably an extension of your Board Game Insider podcast.
Oh, well, thank you for mentioning Board Games Insider.
Well, of course, we're going to mention it
podcast.
every time. That's actually, well, there's more to that we'll talk about later. But anyway,
Yes.
what do you, anything exciting that happened lately?
Well, yes, there's a bunch of things that I think we can talk about. I mean, we've been talking about all that great stuff that happened at Gen Con with
We're
the
going to talk
minor
about the bad thing that
Lorcana.
happened there.
Ooh, there was a bad thing that happened at Gen Con. And I think it's interesting because there's a story and there's a epilogue starting. So at Gen Con on day 0, right? So this was like on Wednesday, actually, is when you and I met, Lincoln, in the
Right.
halls. They're setting up, right? It hasn't even started yet. Everybody's setting up for the show. Apparently, two gentlemen walked away with a pallet of magic cards. Yes, a pallet of magic cards valued at, everyone ready for this? $300,000. Said alleged criminals were seen on videotape on the security cameras, just bringing in a pallet jacking up the pallet of magic cards and walking out. Nobody stopped them because it's very normal throughout the show, especially on setup day, that people are going to be walking around with pallets, moving their product in and out and setting it up. Very sad, terrible for the merchant who was there to sell them. They made a report with the Indiana Police Department, and of course, Gen Con was involved, security cameras and all that. Well, just a couple of days ago, the Indiana Police Department has released the names and faces of 2 persons of strong interest. I don't think we need to mention their names. We can if you do. But they're persons of strong interest, and they are innocent until proven guilty. But the really sad thing about this is that they are game designers. They're one of us. They're part of the industry. And I was really, really saddened by that. So, there's going to be bad people in the world. They're still not proven guilty, but their faces are all over the cameras, and they were walked out with the pallet. So they live in New York City, and if anybody knows where they live, please report it to the New York City and Indiana police departments. That was not a good thing that happened, but these things do happen.
And one of the people was apparently wearing a shirt with the game's logo on the back of it.
The publisher, whatever, yeah. Or the
So
game,
it was
it's
like a self-published kind of game, and he has the logo of the game, and it's not the smartest alleged criminals in the world.
Yes.
So that was the bad thing that happened in Gen Con. But in the end, hopefully, bad people are weeded out in that. Another really interesting thing that happened recently is we reported on Board Games Insider, and it was widely reported even in some mainstream business media, that Embracer Group lost a $2 billion deal. Now, Embracer Group is the parent company of Asmodee, and they own dozens of IPs from electronic games, right? And they bought Middle-earth Enterprises, so now they own all of the Tolkien estate stuff. So several months ago, Embracer Group, in their quarterly and final announcement, their fiscal year, which ended in the end of the first quarter, calendar year, they announced that they had a $2 billion deal taken off the table. So the speculation was, well, who's got $2 billion that are throwing it around here to come there? People, Sony, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, all these big companies. Well, apparently it's none of the above. And it was and this is reported in The Verge and in a couple of other places. And apparently it was a VC fund, a venture capital fund, Saudi Arabia Venture Capital Fund. And they were going to invest in this new Lord of the Rings online game, and they pulled the plug on it, which made Embracer Group stock go into a tailspin, and they lost like 40% of the value in one day, which is when I purchased a little bit. So I'm up since then, which is great. That's a true story.
Right. Disclosure here.
Little disclosure. I purchased it at the bottom, basically, because I saw, well, they'll come back on this. It's just an interesting thing that, we don't think about amounts of money like that in this industry. And those kind of deals are few and far between. but they do happen. And Embracer, parent company of Asmodee, has that kind of money. At the same time, needs that kind of money, right? They bought Asmodee for $3 billion US just about 2 years ago, year and a half ago, or something like that. Pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's intriguing what it's doing to the industry, though. My worry was when Asmodee started to acquire lots of publishers that it would be sort of like Euro Descartes, where they imploded and a bunch of game titles disappeared, and then they slowly came out. I mean, anything that was of importance probably got released eventually, right. But it was concerning, right? It seems that they're able to keep growing, and part of that is acquisition, which I don't know how long you can keep acquiring companies.
As part of the announcement that they lost that deal, Embracer also went into call it an austerity kind of program. They announced that they were laying off people, a significant number, but it was across all divisions. And so Asmodee is now restructuring, moving people around and stuff like that. But that's so normal. I mean, they've acquired so many companies, both Embracer and Asmodee have acquired so many companies over the last 10 years that it's just important that at some point you take a step back and you say, okay, we have all this stuff. Now let's restructure the people and see where they best fit into this huge organization that we're just throwing all together. So that's what's happening right now at those companies.
Yep.
I actually had something, wanted to see if Stephen had this confirmed, but I spoke with a few people at Gen Con, and despite the great sales at Gen Con itself, apparently there's lots of issues with inventory pileups over the past year or so, because companies, of course, there was a big pandemic surge, lots of people entering the market and buying all these games, and people have ramped up production a little bit, and apparently it's ramped up a little too much. And so people are now sitting on stock that is not moving as much, and that, of course, causes issues down the line, because if there's inventory that's just cash sitting there and you can't do anything with it except, clearance it at some point. And so that will affect production and payoff and this and that and the other. So.
Inventory is the bane of any manufacturing business. And when you're talking about board games, these things have to be printed en masse, right? You just can't say, well, I'm going to sell 100, I print 100. You need to print for the future. You need to print a lot to bring your costs down in your print runs. Even Asmodee has released figures recently that they believe the worldwide board game market was down 8% in 2022 after that big surge that you mentioned, Eric. And in the United States, it was down about 5%. So we were doing less bad than others. Any given publisher is going to be doing whatever they're going to be doing, right? I mean, you have a hit game. You take a look at Earth when it came out for
Inside Out.
Inside Out Games, right?
Yep.
Connor has this huge game now, and it's wonderful to see. So he's selling more than he ever has. But another company, they brought out a game, it didn't sell well. So any given company is going to see various results, but overall, you're 100% right. We're in a slightly odd place right now where inventory has piled up. So publishers have to be careful about their print runs and their introduction of new games into the market.
Absolutely. Well, on that upbeat note, hey, what games have you guys been playing lately? You want to start with you, Eric, since you might have to leave us first?
That's right. Let me talk about Butts on Thing.
Oh, really?
This
wow.
was
Classy dude.
It was not that good.
It's not that good. Oh.
Yeah, it has many butt images and butt puns. It is a fabulous game for
But it's not good?
8-year-olds.
Oh, but
No. I'm going to put that behind me. I'm not playing it.
Yes, let us make butt
talk about?
jokes.
That's right. We do. Hold on.
Oh, he's got to go.
No, he's finding something to talk
he's
about.
reaching.
Oh,
I didn't
His
come
pile of
prepared.
Gen
I
Con
have my game in front of me.
Forest Shuffle. Yeah, I want to try that one out.
I did a little overview about Forest Shuffle. I published that. I've now played it twice more. Good stuff. It is a card game in which you are building a forest. There are a bunch of tree cards. And then there are cards that are divided up where you'll have an animal on the bottom and something on the top, or you'll have something on the left and right. And so you're going to be building a forest and you're tucking cards underneath when you pay the cost, and they all have, many of them have comes into play effects, and then they have scoring conditions. And so you're trying to put together this combo of stuff that all scores magnificently. Oh, it's so good. It really like triggered my innovation sensors. Innovation is on my shelf somewhere up there, right?
And you backed the new campaign, correct?
Yeah.
I actually did too.
I don't care if I never play Innovation Ultimate. Like, this is essentially like me saying, thank you, Carl Chuduk. I really appreciate what you've done. I will buy this. I don't care. And so this like triggered that, where it's hand management and putting together combos and trying to screw other people. Because if I see Steven's going with like a deer thing where he's trying to collect all these deer and then feed them to wolves, right? You can, as you're paying for cards, you have to discard them into the middle clearing, right? This is familiar from Race for the Galaxy and all sorts of things where you pay for things. But if at the end of your turn, the clearing has 10 or more cards, all those cards go away. And so it's all about the timing issue where I'm just like, oh, I'm going to pay for this card with 3 deer. Oh, and they'll all go away, Steven. I'm so sorry. Look at this, Steven. So I've only played it with 2 players so far. It's 2 to 5 players. I cannot imagine playing with 4 or 5 as a first game because there's a lot of text and a lot of things to absorb. And you should just do stupid stuff. And, at the end of the game, you'll be like, okay, now I know how to do things. Super fascinating. Love it. Love it. Love
Cool.
it.
So,
Cool.
Eric.
Oh, so they had 500 copies. This is from Lookout. Designer is Kosh, who debuted in 2022 with Fife from Edition Spielwiese. And this is an October release. They had 500 copies at Gen Con. I bought one. So there you go. I didn't even do the stupid survey so I could get a discount because I was just like, I don't care. Just give me that box. I'll buy that box.
Speaking of Carl Chuduk, have you played a GNC yet?
I just got a shipping notice that it's coming soon.
Okay.
Yeah. I bought it at 2019 Gen Con.
Wow.
And they had the limited edition of, I think, 25 copies.
Wow.
I forget how many it was. 50 copies, something like that. Just in a little white box. You got a wooden token with your number on it. And you could put in that number, and then you would get a printed copy sent to you later. Assuming one existed. I played it once, and it's so complicated and so blew my mind. But yeah, I'll play with the real thing soon. Yeah.
I didn't understand what you said at GNC. I thought you were talking about the,
Agency?
vitamins and supplement store. GNC stores. There you go. Do they even exist anymore? I don't even know.
GMC.
GNC, right?
GNC.
GNC.
Yes. No, this is a GNC where cards can be both islands, and you can tuck them under the left and right and this, that, and the other. And there's all sorts of different things going on. And we played once, and it was like my first game of Innovation back in 2010, where you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know the agents. I'm baffled. But you're doing stuff, and it's this weird discovery process where you're just seeing how things work. So it's almost like an interactive play in a way that things are moving all around. You're making stuff happen, but it's almost like it's happening without you doing anything because you don't understand it.
Well, I'll be curious to hear what you think.
Better. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. I picked up a copy of that because I was picking up a Kickstarter copy for my friend. So I was like, I'm just going to buy it for myself. But so far, 2 of my friends have played it, and one of them said it's probably his favorite Carl Chuduk game. So,
as Maddie had 100 copies that had just arrived. This is something to talk about in the future. Companies selling games at conventions when the Kickstarter backers don't have it. That's a topic maybe for a future show, but...
awkward.
Short answer, go for it. Sell those games. People should just not complain about that. That's my short answer.
Okay.
Anyway,
Candice, what did you play recently?
I have played.
I know you've been sick.
Yeah. So as soon as I was feeling better, and because I just recorded an episode of the BGG podcast, which might be out by the time this episode drops, but episode 24 with Monique from Before You Play, we talked about oldies but goodies. And so I thought, since WizKids has this new beautiful version of the Princess of Florence, I thought it would be a great idea to like actually play it and teach it to Matt. So we played a 2-player game of it the other night. And you would think, like, how does that work? Because, you know, there's an auction in this game. And I think on BGG, it's best played with 5. But it was surprisingly, like, really fun at 2 and very cutthroat and competitive. Like, you know, we were constantly jockeying for the lead. And Matt ended up liking it a lot. But I'm sure, like, many people already know about this game because it's been around since, like, 2000. And,
2000, that's what it says on the box in my hand right now. You're trying to tell me this isn't a beautiful copy of the game either?
That's the copy I have.
Yeah.
That's beautiful in a different way.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hey, it fits in on this shelf very well over here.
That's the version I played, but this is really cool because it includes the expansion. I can't think of the name of it right now, but it has different characters and it adds a second auction. It also includes It also includes a cooperative building expansion, which is at first I was like, oh, they have a cooperative move for it. It's not cooperative, but what they do is if you flip your player board over, you link all the different players, however many people are playing, your player boards together. So you have neighbors. So like I could build a building, Lincoln, like if we're sharing a border, and I could negotiate with you to pay for part of that building. Or I can't remember if you pay me because I'm taking my action to place the building, but we're both going to have access to it because it's on our border. And I was like, that sounds really cool. So I really want to try that. There's also, this new version has a solo mode, and I don't think any previous version of it has a solo mode. So I haven't tried that. I do love that the player boards, now you could also be a princess of Florence because the player boards are double-sided and they all have female art and male art. And just the tiles are beautiful. And it's just, it's a banger of a game. Derek Johnson from Heavy Cardboard introduced it to me my first time at the gathering. And when he was like, you haven't played all these classic Euro games? You have to. And I loved it. And I've been like waiting to get a copy because I actually like that really old copy versus the second one, the second printing. But this is even better. So, and again, like this, the other cool thing about this is that Matt instantly liked it. You know, Matt is not hardcore about board games like I am, but you could tell like, he's just like, oh, this is fun. You know, it's not too hard, but it's like very elegant and streamlined. And, yeah. And like I said, even at 2 players, somehow like the auction is interesting because you're kind of playing mind games with each other since, you know, when you do the auction, you're only going to get one thing. Like each player is only going to get one thing. So if I'm the first player to start an auction, I might start an auction on something I don't care about, bid it up a little bit, make Matt get it and make him think he cares about it. And then afterwards I can take something else for just the minimum cost because he can't bid anymore. So there's some like sneaky mind game stuff you can do. And like I said, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it as a 2-player game because I definitely think this is something I will more so prefer with higher player counts. But it works. It works. Cool. So, yeah.
I like how Candice called us all out there. We're all very old.
The old version. Yeah, the very old version. That one came out before I was into the hobby, but I wasn't into it much later, I'll tell you that. I do have an original Rio Grande version of that, which is the Alea. Stephen, what'd you play?
You were not in the hobby in 2000?
No, 2002 was when we first were introduced to Catan.
Very sad.
I was playing Magic.
I've been in the hobby since the 90s. That just probably shows how old I am. That's probably the thing. But
I have a complex back history of board games. So anyway, we'll go on with this.
I have that same copy on my shelf too. It's Alea, right? It's Alea.
Yep, Alea.
Yep.
Alea.
So these are all Alea here.
So my game recently played, and I actually quasi played it at Gen Con too. Well, and this is the best back of a box of all time. There's no barcodes, no nothing on the back of this box. That's crazy.
What is that in the bottom corner there? Is it a gas station?
It's like a gas station.
Yeah, there we go.
It's a
I know
gas
what game
station.
this is. Yeah.
This is Thunder Road Vendetta. Now I'm gonna start by telling you. You see that amazing spot UV
foil.
I'm gonna start by telling you this is going to be, unless something unseats it, my number one game of the year. Thunder Road Vendetta. In Thunder Road Vendetta, you are cinematically going through the last scene of The Road Warrior. You remember that last scene?
Just rewatch. I just rewatched that last week.
Literally,
in preparation to play Thunder Road Vendetta.
No.
Oh, okay.
While I was cleaning the kitchen.
The Road Warrior.
You could literally be you have a team of 3 cars, a small, a medium, and a large. Or you could be the big rig, that oil tanker sort of thing that they were driving and trying to get to someplace. Or you could be the final 5. Because if you remember in that movie, all of a sudden, right at the end of that scene, 5 motorcycles jump out of nowhere because, it didn't make any sense. But it was a great movie, and it was a great final scene. And that's what you're doing in this game cinematically. Doesn't matter if you win or lose this game. It is stupid, silly, ridiculous fun. You're going to drive those cars. You're going to try to win a race, air quote. You're trying to winning a race, but what you're doing is trying to eliminate the other players. Sure. If someone is eliminated, it's going to end the race within the next turn because then it's the first person to get off the farthest board. Otherwise, you keep going until either you're the last person standing or until you have eliminated somebody and somebody then gets to the end of the board. You're shooting at people. You are upgrading cars. You have a character that you can play. All of those are part of the expansions that are in the Maximum Chrome edition of this. The base game is fine. This makes it unbelievable. I got this via the Kickstarter before Gen Con, played it and said, oh my God, I love this so much. I can't love this enough. Played it at Dice Tower East Convention. And then at Gen Con, I saw them demoing it, and there was, people playing it, and the person was demoing it. And then I kind of stepped back away from the table, and there was a bunch of people there watching and seeing. And I was explaining the whole game to them from 5 feet away so they can play the game. This game is awesome. Get it, play it. Silly, stupid fun.
Awesome.
My game of the year.
I just want to chime in real quick because I haven't played it yet. But when I was about on hour one and a half, maybe 2 hours into Age of Innovation in the hot games room that one night, the table across from us, we were just here, so much laughter, and they were playing that. And my friend Steven, who was playing Age of Innovation, he has that game and was saying how much he loves it, how much fun it is. So I am convinced. We don't often see eye to eye.
Candice and I, we don't see eye to eye on games.
I'm gonna check this one out.
Well, cool. I finally got a chance to play Sea Salt and Paper, which a tiny box, much smaller than I expected it to be. I don't know what I thought it was going to be, but holy cow, does this have some beautiful art. It's a bunch of origami. The cards are amazing. Really fun stuff. It is interesting because it is not hard to play. You're basically just trying to get what they call duos or pairs of cards that will then give you a special action, like taking a card from another player, which is the shark. That one you combine a shark and a swimmer. The crab lets you, when you play 2 of these cards, you can go into one of the discard piles and take a card out and add it to your hand. And those are really amazing. And then you're also collecting types of animals. So they have octopus. Let me see here. There's only 6 of them, but the art is really phenomenal. The interesting thing, though, is so you're only going to score a point for a pair of cards, unless you have some sort of card that will augment that later on. For example, there's this one here. When you play stuff with the anchor, then you would get 3 points per anchor card that you play. There's not many anchor cards, I'll tell you that. The penguins, there's only 3. You'll get 1 point for 1. That will be in your hand. So you're only going to score the cards in duos that you played to the table, and you're going to score the cards in your hands that are animal types. And then you'll also score a color bonus. So if you have cards in your hand that don't match up, but they do match colors, you'll get that bonus. But the interesting thing is the bet. So if you think you're going to win the hand, you can bet that you're going to win outright, and the other player will get one more turn, but then you're locked, so they can't steal from you. Or you can just say, this is it, I think I'm going to win this hand. But if you make the bet, you have a chance to make a lot of points. Nikki and I played this game a bunch of times already now since we returned from Gen Con. I really like it. The shuffle is a beast, though. So like if you, several rounds we played, I never saw an animal card at all. All I got were the other cards that you would want to pair up as duos. This is actually a neat card too. If you get 4 of these, and there's only 4 in the game, it's the mermaid, really cute. If you get 4, you win the game immediately. But if you get 1, it's an additional bonus for a color type. And if you have more than 1, you'll pick your greatest for 1 pair, then your next highest. And I actually had 3, but boy, it was pretty far down for the 4. So Nikki, I think won that hand. But it is really quite good and really beautiful. The downer is boy, is that shuffle hard. You really have to do your best to hang in there, and you kind of seems like you should bail out, because as soon as somebody has 7 points, you can call whether you think you're winning, and then make that bet if you think you have the highest score. And that is really, really difficult, because you're each drawing the same amount of cards each turn. It's always one card. You draw 2, pick 1, discard 1 into the 2 piles of discard piles, or draw 1 off the top of the pile. And so you're equally gaining cards. Somebody might, I think in one of the games we played on a stream, Nikki actually had a really terrible hand. It was like 5 different types of cards that didn't really help her. And I think I made the bet, so it was really bad for her. I think she scored 2 points, which is rough. But it's really great. It's Pandasaurus and Bombix, I think, is the French publisher. And I really enjoy the game, and I look forward to getting our own copy of this one. You say something, Eric?
Bombix is the originating publisher. I got to look at the expansion at Gen Con called Extra Salt.
Okay.
Only 8 cards. That's 8. 8 cards, and you're just add those in the deck, and they'll have little special powers. It's got like a jellyfish that you pair with a person, and then you shock everyone, and you take another turn because they all miss their turn because they're shocked from the jellyfish. It's all just like other stuff to mix in. It's a little bit extra, but yeah, it's a nice small package, and it's super fun.
Well, it's Bruno Catala and Théo Rivière, and it really looks like it, right? It's Bruno Catala type game with some interesting tough stuff, and then I love Théo Rivière's games, like the lighthearted quality of the stuff, and this one is, I had no idea what to expect. I just saw people talking about it. I'm like, what is the deal with that? And once we tried it out, I can see why people are excited about it. It really is quite good.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
It's the smallest packaging possible.
Yeah, I mean, it was rare. I mean, we're supposed to get a press copy at some point. I sure would love to get it. We can buy it too. I didn't have any idea. Yeah. I just was immediately put it like, yes, I want that game. And then when I saw it, I'm like, oh, this is an inexpensive game. I could buy this one myself. But it's great.
And they small box.
Yes, and they have this great card that is for colorblind people. So they have a symbol system that says the color add, the color alphabet. So I guess this is a standard setup that they're going to try to that must exist outside of this, and I love that they're doing something like that, because there is a lot of color in the game, especially since that you can see the suit, but you don't necessarily see the color, and I think that is really phenomenal. Well, cool. I'm glad everybody was able to.
Color add is as well. Sorry, I just was going to say, like, you'll have a symbol for blue, and then a different symbol for red, and then the purple is going to have both of them. And so it mixes it together, and you can really see from the icons what everything is. Yeah, it's a very nice.
Yeah, because it is actually showing the color mix too, right? So this is what Eric's referring to. So it has like, for green, you're going to have a blue and a yellow, and that's what it shows here, a slash and a triangle. It is really cool. I think that is a great idea, and I hope that it is more widely adopted for sure. Well, cool. I'm glad everybody was able to join us for the return of the BGG show. This is going to be the format that we're hoping to do, and we're going to shoot for at least once a month for a little while here. The big challenge will be not Gen Con, Spiel. Maybe we'll film that one early. because Gen Con's in the past. And I hope everybody had a good time with us. And I want to thank everyone for joining me. And we hope to see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Butts on things.